Hey, Composer Gloves here, and today I want to talk about something that is a hot topic that may be damaging your progression, but these questions always come up in a good spirit. It is the topic of favorites. Someone said, hey, why don't you list your favorite things currently or your current preferences? Now, I enjoy that because it indicates that he sort of understands what I'm going to say, but a lot of you probably have thought about this a little, but not enough. Having a favorite anything, in my opinion, is a bad thing because if you have a favorite thing versus a favorite principle or rule, then what I mean to say is, like, for example, let's say that you have a favorite reverb plugin. Okay, let's say that you have a favorite reverb, like, oh, I love the Fruity Reverb 2. This is like my go-to reverb for everything. Well, that's really great, but what the problem is maybe there's other reverbs out there that do things that are really unique to them that are better for particular situations, and that had you observed to have a favorite principle, have favorite rules, enjoy knowledge more than owning this plugin, then you would be a better producer. You would be more versatile, you'd have more tools, you'd have more reasons to do things. That's sort of what I strive to do. If I ever say I have a favorite, it's just I prefer it for this particular task. Until I get something that does it a different way, then I prefer that for different reasons at a particular moment. I kind of dance around this favorite thing because it's really kind of bad. This affects people's opinions towards anything. DAWs, how to use sample packs, libraries, presets, creating your own sounds versus someone else's sounds. Like, think about it, all that stuff that when someone says, oh, I'm like a real producer, I make all my own sounds, and then you see them like using samples or something. Well, it's just because they don't understand that they've fallen prey to this thing we call favorites. Presets are not bad. Presets are actually really, really cool. The thing about it is they favoritize the idea of making their own sounds, which damages them in that they are now less capable, or not less capable, but less willing to be capable to use someone else's sounds. They would rather use their own. And now that's not bad if you prefer it, but it's bad if you would call that a favorite. Like, it's almost shunning other people's work. You don't want to use their sounds. You're not interested in that. So it's important to be sort of open about this. So they asked me what my current preferences were. A few things that determine preference. First, when you pick a plugin or a sample pack or something, you've got to become familiar with it. So you got to take the time to become familiar with it. You have to understand what it's used for, and you have to understand why you would use it, and you have to be willing to learn it. You have to be able to deliver what you want to do in the timely manner that you desire to have it done. So, for example, there is an enormous plugin called Reaktor that basically lets you build synths from the ground up. It's a modular synthesizer. It's really, really great, but almost no one like literally goes into like the full depth. If you consider the amount of people who own Reaktor versus like the size of the user library, for example, there's this enormous gap, and there are people who would love to learn how to do things like Reaktor, but it's not their favorite because of the amount of work it requires, the density of information. In order for someone to really prefer that, they would need to be on like a whole another level. Like, there would be a number of things that would have to change, but a lot of people like the synths that other people have made in Reaktor. They prefer them. There's this hierarchy that shows itself. So, for example, my go-to plugin used to be all the ones that I knew the best, and that was mostly FL stock stuff. So Fruity Reverb, for example, even the old reverbs, you'll see me go to particular filters just because I happen to know those filters well. So if you want to develop a favorite, if you want to, like, let's say, for example, I just bought like Native Instruments Complete, and you want to, not that I just bought it, I'm just giving an example, and you ended up with these compressors, the VC76 by Softube. Well, then you're going to want to, this isn't going to be your favorite the second you get it. It's just not gonna. What you need to do is go through, familiarize yourself, and you have to be familiar with a number of things. Compression, all these compression, how it works, expansion, not in this particular case, but you're familiar with dynamics processing. And you need to have a little bit of history behind you. You need to know about the VC76. You may consider opening up the manual. So that's something that's important to realize is the more basic principles, which is what I really like, the more basic principles you can accumulate and add to yourself, the faster you can make things your favorite in that sense, that you can prefer to use them or use them effectively to get the results that you want. And you'll have opinions about why things sound certain ways. That's part of the beauty of compressors, is how different they can sound. So they have several here. But I also have FL stock stuff, like I have Maximus, and there are reasons why I'd pick Maximus and why I would consider that a preferable choice versus another one. It's all completely based on how much I am capable of using the power presented to me. So I would not go in. Now there's a cool multi-band compressor and reactor, but a lot of you guys would not have that even anywhere near your list because you would not know how to use it because it is a pretty scary looking thing if you've never really worked with multi-band before. And it's an older style plugin. Well, it was an ensemble someone else built. I think it's freaking amazing, but there's just all these things that determine this. So this also applies for things like sample packs. Like obviously the sample packs that you know where stuff is are going to be the ones you go to. Like I know Black Octopus Leviathan reasonably well. I know what their samples sound like. I know what they feel like. If I want a particular sound, I'll go through and experiment with other libraries to extend my selection. But then I'll usually, if I'm like, I just know where a sound is. It's better to just go get that sound. So this brings up an important point that having favorites, now favorites in the sense that you know basic principles and you simply use plugins for what they may be optimized to, and it might not always be a technical thing. Like I hear this sort of opinion that, oh well, I use this synth because it can do everything. Like for example, Harmor is a big one among FL, especially FL users. They're like, oh, I use Harmor because it's like the most powerful additive synthesis, and that's really great, and it's kind of true in certain respects. They claim the most powerful parts. Now they kind of tone down what it can't do because they don't want to talk about that because they're hyped up on Harmor, and that's fine. I was part of that crew for a little while when I was still learning. And it was one of the first synthesizers I really learned the ins and out of. So I still go to it all the time. And it's got a lot. Now I'm way more able to express my opinions towards it on why I'd use it for one thing but not another thing. And you can almost always make it work. And so sometimes the questions come down to like the workflow, the way it allows you to manipulate what you want to do. Like say, for example, I want to make a cymbal crash or a kick drum. And not use samples for some reason. Harmor may be a reasonable choice because of the extreme harmonic ability I have to shape content. And it might have particular filters the way they sound. So they have a whole load of filters. And the more you learn about filters, the more you begin to sort of appreciate that. And that goes into plugins too. So originally, if you were to ask me like a year ago, even maybe a little over a year, I would have said like Harmor, Citrus, sort of. Citrus wouldn't have been on my front of my list. It is way more up there now because I've read about it. I've followed all those rules. I've sought the knowledge behind it rather than, and in practice, of course. Nothing can replace practice. But those things combined has increased it. If you ask me about distortion plugins, I'll say Fruity Wave Shaper because I know how to manipulate it and know what it does. But there are other ones. There's the Xfer 8-bit wave shaper, which is really cool. There's a free wave shaper made by Melda Audio called M Wave Shaper. It's in here. Very similar to Fruity Wave Shaper, but there are differences, and those differences I can exploit, and I might take them out just to get used to them. There it is, M Wave Shaper. And so you could see, and they just different ways of displaying things, different ways of viewing things, different facilities within a plugin. So all these things form it. So some people are like, all I have is Serum and la. And I am very, very for that. It's important to have like a preference that you're really, really, really for, but it's bad to say it's your favorite and now I'm all done learning about this thing because I have this thing and it's going to show me everything in the universe. That's like such a bad thing. That's like a favorite book. Like think about it. If you were to just look at it from the perspective of books, this is my favorite book. It's Designing Audio Plugins in C++, right? Let's just say that that's your favorite book. You're like, oh yeah, this is the book. I'm not reading any other audio books anywhere near this topic ever again because this is it. This is the one, You see the issue there? Like it just makes zero sense. And so it's important that you do that. So the question that I've already kind of answered is, how does something become your favorite? Well, you read the manual, you get experience, you deliberately go out of your way to use the thing. You start gaining preferences. You open up a sample library and begin to put stuff down and use it. It might not sound great at first, but as you combine it with your other stuff, you will get better and better and better. Now, I'll list to you some of the plugins I find myself going to quite often, mostly because they were just rooted in the beginning. And honestly, I can pretty legitimately say that I don't go to the same stuff very often anymore, especially in the mixing realm. Now in the plugins realm, just because, you know, I'm not made of money, I do have some that I've selected to be sort of cost-effective solutions that allowed me to do pretty much everything I want to do. Some of you guys might not think that Complete was one of the best purchases I ever made because it fulfilled a huge amount of what I needed. Owning Kontakt alone, Kontakt is on my list, but it's like kind of cheap to say that because Kontakt is like every sound ever. I don't have my drive plugged in, so it's not all there because I have it on an external that I take with me places. But Kontakt freaking is on my list of things that if I were to list favorites, and this is like it because of the amount of stuff in here. Until I've seen other sample players, I have looked at them. I even had an interesting talk. One of my instructors pulled out another really, really big one. I forgot the name of it though. I just don't have that much exposure with it, so I can't talk about that. It's the same thing with DAWs. Obviously, I prefer FL right now, but I have experience in Pro Tools a lot. Well, not a lot, but enough to where I would definitely use Pro Tools over FL for a number of reasons. In the recording situations, particularly. I have a little bit of experience at Ableton. I would not say that I'm like proficient in Ableton at this time, but honestly, just going through the manual and just doing a ton of stuff, you'll be like 50 times more proficient than like 80% of Ableton users just by going through and doing all that stuff and doing it daily, just following like basic success rules that people just don't follow because they're not serious. If you decide to be serious, you'd be surprised how far you can get. And I know that I would have a lot of carryover knowledge. All the things that will pop out to me are all the differences between that and now Pro Tools, because I've like had to learn Pro Tools in ways that I did not think I would need to know. Because when you get into studios, that's pretty much what they use. You just can't get away. And they all use. I'm a PC guy, but man, I can run a Mac now, and I've had lessons on like how to go into weird Mac stuff. So that's another great example. Do I prefer PC or Mac? I honestly don't care anymore at all. Like, I just don't. The difference would be, can it run the software I want it to run? And almost like, and people will say, oh, well, you can open up Boot Camp and la 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 la. So Mac people will like claim that, but it's like, that's not a super big deal. I've never seen it become an issue in like in a professional world. I've not ever seen it become an issue. Now, I will say this: when I am in a studio, and I've been in a studio with like 15 other producers, and I will be like the only Windows user, and everyone else will have Mac. And so it's just convenient to have Mac. So there are things that you consider. So again, just my preferences: Kontakt, Harmor, and Citrus are of course staples that I really enjoy. I know Harmless, I'll pull it out for various reasons that just you get a different feel, different workflow, different inspiration. I mean, if we look at it all from a very technical point of view, you could get really like detailed and stuff. But if you look at it from a creative standpoint, workflow and inspiration and doing things you wouldn't normally do, it's valuable to pull out other stuff. But I don't own a lot of plugs. And now Reaktor, I dig into here all the time, and I'm constantly pulling out weird samples. I don't do it usually on my tutorials, but it's really fun to dig through there and just get familiar with it and start hooking stuff up in weird ways and even try to build stuff. Another thing, so amongst the plugins, I honestly, like, I really can't list favorites. You see there's a list here, and I'm constantly like loading and removing stuff from this list. It's been consistent for a while now. I come in here to this M stuff, Melda, what is it? Melda Productions. They have a free bundle that has this ad at the bottom though. And the free bundle, it's like 50 euros to get rid of it. So it's really worth it. I plan on doing it. But isn't that the story of everyone that says they're going to buy something? So anyways, they have a free suite, so you can go check that out. I love all their stuff. It's really good. I pull it out all the time. I really like their EQ. I think it's very intuitive. If I had to list an EQ I'd pull out the most, it'd be this one. It'd be the Fruity Parametric EQ2, just because it works with FL. So there's a couple reasons. It works with FL, so it sounds great. Although some people notice the crossovers when you just turn it on, the all pass crossover, which is, it's not a big deal. If I'm going to be EQing, then it's going to EQ crap. And you have to listen really closely to even hear that difference anyways. You're not going to miss it in a mix. The only time it would stack up over if you have a whole bunch of them open, but it'd still be like that big of a difference. Like, yeah. So, yeah, that one sounds great. Good filters, stuff like that. And I've used it ever since the beginning, so that's another reason why. And I know that it's CPU friendly big time with FL. I pull out TDR Nova more and more and more as a multi-band compressor. This is a free plug too. Go check out my free VSTs list. Very, very excellent. Let's see here. The BX Solo actually has a place too. I just like it for its matrixing. I could pull out other stuff to get the matrixing out of it, but I like it for that. The oscilloscope and visualizers have to go to Wave Candy for now, but there are other plugs that I was looking at getting that I think would exceed it in particular circumstances. Distortion's up and up there. Like it's like all over the map. Usually Fruity Wave Shaper if I'm shaping bass or something. But if I'm going for like high frequency like not high frequency, like pianos and stuff, I'll generally want saturation. In which case I could go with Limiter or Maximus. Maximus, of course, for compression all the time. I use Soundgoodizer as just a parallel compressor sometimes. Just squash it. Now you got sometimes some of the Soundgoodizer presets apply saturation in sort of more of a mastering fashion than a mixing fashion. But I kind of like that. Like the idea is that you could mix that in with a sub bus. It's kind of cool. Let's see what else is in here that I tend to grab a lot. The Wave Shaper, I definitely grab a ton. So I have a couple other Wave Shapers that I'll pull out occasionally just because I like having the variety. Compressors, honestly, I cannot even list a favorite compressor. Like Maximus, sure. But they all sound so different and they all have their own little pieces of history. Some of them, like this one, for example. And like the Very Comp is a type of compressor actually, and so these are modeled ones, so they're kind of special. And you'll notice that really good mixers will have ones, and they just know what they sound like. And so if their sound needs something, they'll go grab it because they've experimented, they've had this experience. You know, they read the manuals, they know the principles, and so it's less about whether or not the plugin looks fancy or that they know what they're doing with that particular plug because they know what they're doing with every plug. So it's all about just, you know, is it the thing I wanted that moment in time? Now, sample packs, I'm not sure if you're banking on this. If I had to pick DAWs, I would totally go in this order. FL Studios. Pro Tools. Okay. For EDM production, FL. Okay. That's just the way it is. Even classical music, but I would probably go into Sibelius. No, I'd go into Finale, to be real. I'd go into Finale Hardcore because Sibelius, if you enter a note over a chord that's already there, it would freaking, your whole chord disappears. Now, like, it's the most annoying thing ever if you're entering notes in a composition fashion. Workflow for composition, I do not like Sibelius for that. I do like anything that supports an insert note system for that. Just for composing. If I was a copyist, Sibelius, of course. Not even Finale can compare there too, but Sibelius is more of a staple and it's got a lot more integration with Pro Tools. So yeah, and I'm just way more comfortable with Finale. So that's one of the things. I just need to become more familiar with Sibelius, work with it more, and my opinion will become more leveled out and less, you know, one-sidedness. But as far as the workflow thing goes, I do notice a substantial change when I use Finale. Okay. So classical FL, Ableton would be, especially for performance, Ableton like wins. And then Pro Tools would slam them both for recording. Like if I'm going to record something, especially a band or something that involves, you know, a lot of mics and a patch bay and outboard stuff and all that jazz, Pro Tools was made for that. It just slaughters everything else right now when it comes to that domain. There are other stuff like Studio One, but I have no experience in Studio One, so I can't really speak for it. So another thing is, you know, you just pick out, you know, anyways, I don't even know where I was going with that. Sample pack wise, if you're going to buy just one sample pack and you're making EDM, I totally recommend Black Octopus Sounds Leviathan. It's an amazing pack. I bought it, don't regret it. I use it all the freaking time. There are a number of free sample packs that I list on, I think I have a free samples playlist actually. And I go to Kontakt for most other things. I do have the Machine library that I do go to a ton. They have like Native Instruments is just excellence, but I like the Machine library because you can get to it as files here. Some of the Kontakt files use a proprietary sample format, so you have to open up the instrument to get to it, which is like not cool, but I could see why they did that. And I believe that's only for the commercial instruments. If you go into the libraries by third-party developers, you can find the folder where the samples are kept, and they will not be in some weird file. They'll be in the regular file. So that's that. That's pretty much my spiel. Some of my favorites, some of the reasons I choose them, some of the ideas behind favoritism and why you may consider learning rather than trying to get the next greatest plugin. learn what plugins you already have. Like Pro Tools has a number of plugins that I don't even have listed here because they're in a different format. So when I'm working in a different DAW, I don't even use the same plugs. When I'm working in Renoise, I'm using Renoise stuff, and it has a similar rack setup, so it's, you know, different. And so when I'm picking different places, Renoise is largely just experimental, but that's the way I use it anyways. I'm not saying that like people who use that are only experimenting. I'm not saying that. So yeah, hopefully this was useful to you. Hopefully you if you have an opinion about this, which I'm pretty sure you do, drop it in the comments. You know, what's your opinion on favorites? What are some of your favorite plugs? There's plugs you like to use for a particular thing, not necessarily that you corner yourself to that plug. And usually when people say that's my favorite, they have that in mind. But if they say like, oh, Harmer's the best and it totally crushes Razor, for example, that's a common statement because of this, that, and this, then they are blind. Like they do not see. They don't know sound design in Razor. They made tons of libraries in Razor. They might have a different opinion. It's a very intuitive plugin. Now there's some times when your tool really is better and that other tool just sucks on multiple levels. And the only reason you would use it is because it's different, and that's pretty much it. It's different, so you'll get sounds that you just wouldn't come up with normally. And so in that way, it's valuable. It's not that it's not valuable. It's just there are stuff that just will allow you to do what you want to do better, faster, cooler, stronger. So you're going to use that. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day. Yeah.